Jim Hawthorne here, Elder Bard and Druid, of course, head in the Switzerland. I haven't done one of these for a while, so I'm just going to do a bit of a garden update. Slight disclaimer, there are loads and loads of gardening channels on YouTube, so I'm not going to get into much of the how-tos. I'm just going to show you how the garden's going and really use it as I use this as a sort of platform to talk about Druidry. Gardening is probably my main expression of Druidry in a way, and I've talked about this in previous videos. Today I'm filming this at new moon, so this is the beginning of the Easter, the seed moon, which will become full in a couple of weeks, and then Easter will be on the following Sunday. So this is really important. This is the sort of the starting point for most gardeners. I don't bother sowing seeds in February anymore. If you've got a greenhouse or heated propagators or whatever, you can sow seeds in February, but I don't bother. We could still get frosts here even in early May, so that's Beltane. That gives sort of 6 weeks to grow the plants on and get ready and get the ground ready for planting out. The only thing I've actually planted out this year so far has been another row of broad beans, and I'll show you that in due course. Started sowing seeds already. Come the full moon, I'm going to sow, I'll plant out my potatoes, which I've got chitting inside, and I'll also sow out my first rows of carrots at full moon. Root vegetables are better sown around the full moon. Most other stuff, most leafy vegetables, we want to sow now at the new moon. You can see the cosmos is already coming up quite nicely. I've got campanula and hollyhocks. And here, more flowers. I've got poached eggs, scabious, catnip, pinks, and tagetes, marigolds. Or maybe tagetes, I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that. French marigolds anyway. In the vegetable section, I've got my tomatoes and basil over on the left hand side there, and on the right a new experiment this year, some orach. I assume that's how you pronounce it. I've got a whole range of different sorts of things here, my usual kalettes, kale. I'm new this year, some pak choi, Chinese cabbage and mibuna. We'll see how they go. And then on the right hand side I've got my turnips coming up. They're looking a bit of a funny colour, which is worrying me slightly. These are squashes left over from last year, so I've still got squashes to eat. And as it goes, shed loads of borlotti beans, which I'm going to actually have to make an effort to eat, although I dare say they will keep. The soil temperature is currently about 10 degrees centigrade. That's I think 50 Fahrenheit in old money. In this bed, as you can see, I'm growing lots and lots of weeds. Actually, a lot of this is mustard, which is a ground cover. I was hoping the frost would kill it off, but it hasn't really. So over there I've got loads of garlic, which is overwintered, and that's looking really rather good. A little bit yellow on the leaves, but I think that's mostly because it hasn't really got going yet. And then this end, under the netting, I've got some spinach and beetroot. Did have some coriander, but that doesn't seem to have survived, unfortunately. So that's going to get a good weeding, and I've got lots and lots of other brassicary type things to join them in there, I think. Down here, you can see doing nicely. My first these are the broad beans I sowed last year. Where are we? And look, we've got flowers already, so that means we're going to get beans probably in about a month's time. That's all good. I've sown another couple of rows of broad beans in here. Not sure if that's one. I haven't, not much happening yet. We'll see. I've improvised a little windbreak. That mess of fleece there is a bit of a windbreak because we get the wind blowing in from the west here, and it does seem to affect things. This is chard, Ford Hook Giant Chard. It's done incredibly well. It's overwintered. Basically, it's far too much for me to eat, so I'm probably not actually going to grow any chard this year. I'm going to make space for some other things like pak choy and Chinese cabbage and see how I get on with those. But yeah, if you want something which is going to feed you all year round, this Ford Hook Giant Chard is absolutely amazing. I've got the remains of some radicchio. I'm probably going to pull that up, but those leaves, some of those leaves would actually be edible still. That was lovely, a bit bitter, but not to everyone's taste. And here is the honesty is coming into flower, which is bound to please any passing bees. Right, down in the next bed, here's my pot full of black peppermint. Absolutely gorgeous stuff that is. And this bed will be, I'm going to sow various leafies in here, so definitely the orac will go in, and we'll see what else. I don't really know just yet. This is the thyme I planted last year, if you remember. That's doing very well. It's got something in it there. And that's marjoram, I believe. So behind it I've got my carrot beds, which need a bit of attention. They're slightly falling apart and need weeding before I plant some carrots, and maybe a bit more compost actually. Around here I'm really pleased with these. These are the alliums coming up that I planted last year. These are Aflatunensis, so obviously very close to my fart. And you can see the straw underneath them is actually the remains of the nasturtiums. So along here I've got my sorrel coming up quite nicely. I may well be sort of harvesting that, because that's very cut and come again. It's worth sort of cutting down. Not all of it's wonderfully appetizing, but there are some good leaves in there. And then behind it, we have got, look, I'll see if I can zoom in on there. Look at that. These are my first asparagus spears properly. So this row has been, I think this row I put in 2 years ago. I'm not sure if that means they're edible yet, but they might be. And then this row here, which hasn't started doing anything yet, went in last year, so they won't be terribly exciting, but that is very exciting indeed. Okay, and then over here, let's talk about over here. I dug up my strawberries. I know that sounds awful, doesn't it? Basically nobody was eating them. Not me, not the birds, not my neighbours, and they were taking up an awful lot of space, which quite frankly I thought this would be a really good place for planting courgettes. So that's what I'm going to do. I've actually put down a bit of cardboard and compost to sort of suppress whatever was going on underneath, because those, I mean, as you can see, the strawberries still, you know, I've still got bits and pieces coming through. and they will keep reappearing for years to come, I dare say. Okay, here is my I moved the comfrey last year, and that's been incredibly successful, and that's all come out in flower, which I'm sure the bees will be very happy with. This is not quite so happy. My artichokes, yeah, look at that, that's the one surviving. They did not, we had a very, very wet winter, and they didn't like it. Their roots have rotted, or at least the stems have rotted. Now, from previous experience, I know they may well re-sprout, so I'm going to leave them for a bit. If I do end up with gaps in this bed, I've got some more seed and I can always sow some more. The star of the show at the moment is my brassicas. Look at them. Absolutely loads of it, and I'm very, very happy with it. These ones at the end, these are supposed to be Calabrese, and quite frankly I'm finding it difficult to tell the difference. But they're producing absolutely monster. I mean, they need harvesting again today, so we're taking some more on the Calets. The Calets haven't done so well, because I've planted them far too close together with all the other things. It's quite obvious. They have been productive, and they're now starting to produce broccoli of their own, so that's just all going to go in the mix. Some of these top leaves as well are very tender, and they're worth eating. And then I've got down underneath them, I've got some other kale plants, and of course it wouldn't be complete without a trip to the compost heap. This is last year's compost. It's doing rather well. I mean, I'm still filling it up, but I think that's about it, and I'm going to put this one to bed, and I will start up the other empty base soon. The other thing we need to talk about is a lovely apple tree. This obviously isn't doing very much at the moment. It's just starting to bud at the tops, you can see. Not really very much to report, still looks quite skeletal, but that will all change very soon. Round the bottom, I'm going to come out a bit. It's a bit hard to tell, isn't it? That actually is chamomile all the way around the bottom of the tree. I am incredibly happy with, as you can imagine. So if you remember last year, or you don't have to, I'll show you a picture. There you go. Good. That was it last year, looking a bit rough. This year it's pretty much covering the ground. I might put a few more plants in just for good measure, but it's basically doing what I want it to do right now. I've got a little patch of chamomile I can sit on under the tree and talk to you. The Druid relevance of spring equinox is really, it's the time of year that everything gets going again. Many flowers are triggered into flowering by the equal day and night. Now, that actually happened a couple of days before new moon, basically due to the size of the sun and the fact that light bends. There's slightly more daylight than there is night. It's easier to lighten the darkness than it is to darken the light, I suppose. Equinox is actually was on the 17th of March or somewhere around there, and this today is Equinox, which is the point where the sun crosses the equator. Imbolc is kind of like the start of the idea of spring, but it's not very warm then, and you know, because you can use gardening metaphors for the rest of, for anything else, for creative endeavors, for business. Imbolc is the time that you make your plans. It's the time I sorted my seeds out into their box and decided what I was going to grow this year and what order I wanted to sow them in and all that kind of stuff. It's when I started weeding, getting rid of all the weeds that had grown up over the winter. I've still got a bit to do, as you can probably see, but by and large these beds are now ready. I've got another month. I've just started sowing seeds. To be honest, some of those I think I might have scorched. They might have got scorched because the sunlight has been so fierce, unusually fierce in the past couple of days, that I've had to take the seedlings out of the window because I think they were just getting scorched by the sunlight. So I might have to re-sow some of those. Either way, I've got another month before I want to start planting things out into the ground, and a lot of things like the tomatoes are going to wait until May, brassicas as well. Today we also sort of out in the world, we've just announced the bards of Gorsedd and Switzerland have just announced our theme. Every year we have a theme for the bardic competition, and our current chaired bard announced the theme of Crucible this year. So that's the theme we're asking everyone to go and write poetry and songs and stories about. And if you live within the catchment area, about 12 miles around Glastonbury, you're welcome to come and join in with the competition. But you know, inspiration is free, and there's no reason why you shouldn't participate and get writing. You know, it's a great time to be creative. So you know, this, because it's using this sort of part of the year, this upwelling of growth and life, to put into whatever your current project is. So there you have how the garden looks at Spring Equinox 2026. Thank you for checking in, and leave your likes and comments below and all that kind of stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.